You're standing at checkout. The total shows $327. You pause. 6 months ago, this exact cart cost you around $240. Same products, same routine. But something changed, and no one explained it. You look down again. Chicken, eggs, bread. Nothing new, nothing upgraded. And yet your normal life now costs more than it did before, without any visible reason. You pay anyway. You always do. But as you walk out, there's that quiet moment where something doesn't feel right, even if you can't fully explain it yet. Because it's not just groceries. Rent went up. Insurance increased. Subscriptions multiplied. Small numbers stacking until your margin quietly disappeared without a clear breaking point. And here's the part that really doesn't make sense. Your income didn't drop. You might have even gotten a raise, but somehow that raise feels smaller than expected. You felt this before. That subtle pressure, like running at the same speed while something underneath you is slowly pulling you backward. So your brain searches for a reason. Maybe I'm spending more. Maybe I lost discipline. Maybe I just need to try harder and be more careful. But when you actually look at your behavior, nothing major changed. Same habits, same lifestyle, same decisions. Which leads to a more uncomfortable question. What if the problem isn't you? Because what you're experiencing isn't random, and it's not temporary in the way most people hope it is. It's something structural. This is not a money problem. This is a system reset. The rules you learned about money still exist, but they no longer produce the same results, and that shift happened quietly without any clear signal. You were taught a simple formula. Work. Earn more over time. Save what's left. And eventually, life becomes easier. That model worked because effort translated into progress. Costs were stable. Growth was predictable. The system supported you. Now that connection is weakening. Not because you failed, but because the environment changed how money behaves in ways most people still don't fully understand. This is where it gets interesting. Because once you see the pattern, everything that felt confusing starts making sense. There are forces behind this shift, and they don't look dramatic. They look normal, which is exactly why most people miss them. The first force is hidden inflation. Prices don't just rise. Portions shrink, quality changes, and cost increase in ways that avoid attention. The second force is income lag. If your salary grows 4%, but your real costs rise closer to 7%, you're not moving forward. You're slowly falling behind. The third force is normalized debt. What used to be emergency borrowing is now part of everyday life, quietly covering the gap between income and reality. And the fourth force is psychological adaptation. You adjust faster than you question because the change wasn't sudden. It was gradual enough to feel normal. This is where most people lose, not because they make bad decisions, but because they never fully notice how the environment changed around them. Now let's make this real. Meet Jack. He's 31, has a stable job, and earns a decent income. The kind of life that should work if you stay consistent and avoid major mistakes. 2 years ago, Jack felt comfortable. His bills were covered, his savings were growing slowly, and there was a sense that things were moving forward. Today, his income is higher, but his savings stopped growing, not disappearing, just stuck in place, repeating the same number every month. Money comes in, money goes out, and nothing meaningful stays behind. No progress, just stability that feels thinner than it used to. He reviews his spending, looking for mistakes, but nothing stands out. No luxury purchases, no reckless decisions, just normal life continuing. And that's what makes it dangerous. Nothing feels wrong enough to fix, yet nothing feels right enough to grow. Now meet Daniel. Daniel earns slightly more and believes the solution is simple. Work harder, earn more, and eventually the pressure will disappear. So he pushes, takes extra work, increases his income, and for a moment it feels like he's getting ahead again. But then something happens. His costs rise with his income. His lifestyle adjusts. The system absorbs his progress faster than he expected. And over time his effort increases, but his sense of progress doesn't. It feels like acceleration without movement. Now meet Sarah. Same environment, same pressures. But she noticed something earlier, that her results were changing even when her behavior stayed the same. Instead of pushing harder, she adjusted her structure. She stopped relying on leftovers and started deciding where her money goes first. Her income didn't explode, but something else changed. Her margins slowly started to return. Not dramatic, not immediate, but consistent. And that's where the separation begins. Jack is stable but stuck. Daniel is pushing but not progressing. Sarah is adapting even if it doesn't look impressive yet. Same system, same conditions, different outcomes starting to form. Because when rules change, behavior matters more than effort. You've probably seen this already in your own life or in people around you, where similar effort leads to very different results. That's not luck, it's structure. And if you don't see that structure clearly, you'll keep trying harder at a system that no longer rewards the same behavior. This is the shift most people miss, not because it's hidden, but because it's gradual enough to feel normal. And by the time it becomes obvious, the gap between people who adapted and people who didn't is already starting to grow. That gap is small at first, almost invisible, but over time it becomes the difference between control and constant pressure. Because the system doesn't stop or reverse. It keeps moving, whether you notice it or not. And the longer you assume things will go back to how they were, the longer you stay aligned with a version of reality that no longer exists. This isn't about panic. It's about awareness, because awareness is what allows your behavior to change before it's too late. Because once you see the shift clearly, your decisions start to change, even in small ways that don't feel important at first. And those small changes are what eventually create separation, not instantly, but consistently over time. That's the part most people underestimate, not the size of the change, but the timing of it. Because by the time everyone else sees it, the gap is already difficult to close. And that's the moment where the system stops feeling confusing and starts feeling real. The only question is whether you saw it early enough to respond. Now, this is where things begin to separate, and not in the way most people expect. The difference doesn't start with income or intelligence, but with how people respond to the shift. Because once the system changes, doing the same things doesn't keep you stable anymore. It slowly moves you backward, even if your effort stays exactly the same. And this is where most people react the wrong way. They try to fix the pressure with more effort instead of questioning the structure behind it. Work more. Save harder. Cut small expenses. Stay disciplined. It feels productive, but it doesn't address what's actually creating the pressure underneath. Because effort alone can't fix a system that now produces different results from the same actions, no matter how consistent you try to be. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because your brain doesn't immediately blame the system. It looks for something closer, something easier to control. It starts with you. You begin to think you're not doing enough, not saving enough, not managing things correctly, even when your behavior hasn't actually changed in any meaningful way. But this is the part nobody explains clearly. When the structure shifts, old behavior doesn't create growth anymore. It only helps you maintain position. And even maintaining position becomes harder over time, because the system keeps adjusting while you're still trying to play by the same rules. So what used to feel like progress now feels like survival, and survival feels like failure when you expected your life to keep improving. You felt this already, that strange gap between effort and results, where you're doing more but seeing less and you can't fully explain why. That gap isn't random, it's feedback. It's telling you that your environment changed, but your strategy didn't change with it. And that difference compounds over time whether you notice it or not. Let's go back to Jack. Jack keeps doing what he's always done. He works, pays his bills, and saves what's left at the end of the month, believing consistency will eventually work again. But there's a flaw in that system. What's left keeps shrinking, not because he's careless, but because more gets taken before he even notices. So his savings don't disappear overnight. They just stop growing, and over time that feels like being stuck in place without a clear reason. Now look at Daniel. Daniel responds differently. He increases effort, takes on more work, and pushes for higher income, believing that will eventually solve the pressure. And at first it seems like it works. His income increases, and for a moment it feels like he's finally moving forward again. But then something else happens. His costs rise with his income, and the system absorbs his progress faster than he expected. So he ends up in the same place again, just with more effort behind it, and that's where frustration slowly starts building. Now look at Sarah. Sarah noticed the shift earlier, not because she's smarter, but because she questioned why her results were changing, even when her behavior stayed consistent. Instead of pushing harder, she adjusted her structure. She stopped relying on leftovers and started deciding where her money goes before it disappears. At first, nothing looked different. No dramatic changes, no visible breakthroughs, just small adjustments that didn't feel important in the moment. But over time, those adjustments created something the others didn't have anymore. Margin. Not a huge amount, not something you notice immediately, but enough to reduce pressure and create space for better decisions. Because this is how the system works now. Not through big moments, but through small differences that compound quietly over time. This is where it gets interesting because the real shift isn't financial first, it's psychological. Your brain is designed to assume stability. It expects tomorrow to look like yesterday, and that assumption works until the environment starts changing slowly. When change is gradual, your brain doesn't trigger urgency. It normalizes discomfort instead of questioning it, which delays your response. So instead of adapting early, you adjust passively, and by the time you realize something changed, you're already behind. There's another pattern happening at the same time. Short-term relief decisions. When pressure builds, your brain looks for quick solutions that reduce stress now, even if they increase pressure later. That's where small spending, easy credit, and delayed payments start to feel like solutions, instead of signals that something deeper is wrong. And this is how the loop forms. You earn, you spend, you adjust, and then repeat the same cycle again, feeling active and busy but not actually moving forward in any meaningful way. You felt this before? That strange sense of movement without progress where everything looks fine on the surface but feels different underneath. This is where most people stay, not because they can't escape, but because they don't clearly see the pattern they're inside of. So nothing changes, and over time the system keeps taking more while giving less in return for the same level of effort. So what actually changes this? Not extreme actions and not risky decisions, but small structural shifts that change how your money behaves before it disappears. First, you stop saving what's left and start deciding what stays before anything gets spent, because leftovers shrink automatically in a changing system. Second, you identify silent leaks, subscriptions, small recurring payments, unnoticed increases because they don't feel dangerous but quietly remove your margin. Third, you understand your real numbers, exact inflow and outflow, because clarity changes behavior faster than motivation ever can. Fourth, you allow your money to move instead of sitting still, because in a system like this, inactivity is not safety, it's slow erosion. None of these changes feel dramatic in the moment, and that's exactly why most people ignore them until it becomes harder to recover. But over time, they create separation between people who stay stuck and people who slowly regain control over their financial lives. 5 years from now, that difference won't look like luck or talent. It will look like small decisions made early enough to matter. Because the system won't stop, and it won't return to what it was. It will keep moving forward whether you move with it or not. And this is the part that matters most. A system change doesn't announce itself twice. It gives you one moment of confusion, one period of discomfort, and then it becomes the new normal. And once it becomes normal, most people stop questioning it completely, even if it continues working against them quietly. You've already felt that moment, that quiet realization that something changed, even if you couldn't fully explain it at the time. So the real question is simple. Are you still playing by rules that no longer work? Or are you ready to adapt before the gap becomes irreversible? And if this felt familiar, then you already know the answer. The only thing left is whether you act on it now or wait until it becomes unavoidable.